Hi everyone, my name is Armstrong. I'm a third year human geography student at the University of Glasgow, and my presentation is called Let Glasgow Cooperatives Flourish. And this is the crest of our city, and the motto is Let Glasgow Flourish. You can't see it on the slide, but it's on a lot of our famous architecture, like our bridges and our buildings. And I think cooperatives can help our city flourish. Glasgow Student Housing Cooperative is GSHC, and we are composed of 4 full-time students at the University of Glasgow. And our vision for our cooperative living is to provide stability and affordability for students across Glasgow educational institutes in the face of the student housing crisis, which is particularly acute in Glasgow. And the National Union of Students have found that 12% of students had experienced homelessness during their studies. We're part of a federation of cooperatives, of student housing cooperatives managed by Student Cooperative Homes, and Lisa helped us out a lot, and we really appreciate it. They provide funding and legal support whilst we house hunt for a suitable property, and we would lease it from them and manage it ourselves. We've been house hunting on the open market since around 2017, however, we have not secured a property this way, so we're reevaluating our strategy, as Lisa said. We've viewed and considered many different building options, such as converting commercial developments, office blocks, and also an ex-care home. We face many financial and institutional barriers to setting up our housing cooperative. Property prices have been steadily rising in Glasgow, especially around the West End, which is undergoing a lot of gentrification. We also require a house and multiple occupation licence, which is expensive, hard to apply for, and it's very difficult to find suitably laid out properties without renovations. We've also spoken at a cross-party working group in the Scottish Parliament about student housing instability, the need for cooperatives, and the need for legislative change to make that cooperative living more feasible. Vernacular and contemporary architecture in Glasgow. Victorian sandstone tenements are an iconic part of Glasgow and form a large part of the central city housing stock. These tenements in the photo are directly opposite our university. They're usually 3 to 5 stories high with a shared close and a garden or lane towards the back, and sometimes a courtyard. Glasgow city centre has many vacant office blocks and also residential units and vacant retail units. There's a mix of surviving Victorian tenements and newer built residential tower blocks and housing schemes towards the suburbs, some of which have been converted into a really interesting co-op called Hawthorne Housing Cooperative. They house many people in different stages of life and often vulnerable social groups. And in our case for students particularly, our educational institutes are spread across Glasgow, but most of them have very good public transport links with free buses for under 22s and a circular subway system. Cooperative history of Glasgow. Glasgow has a long history of cooperation. The Scottish Wholesale Society has multiple branches across Scotland, and the Glasgow branch was called the St George Cooperative Society, which is now dissolved. It was founded in 1870 with its first shop opening in 1871. The goal of the cooperative was to provide working class people with quality, affordable food and manufactured goods, and a share of the cooperative profits as dividends, which improved people's quality of life. At its peak, St George's Cooperative Society had 45 branches in Glasgow, plus other facilities people could use, like workshops. St George's provided lots of community services, such as banking, funeral plans, and leisure, such as restaurants, a band, sports clubs, and a literary society. Glasgow Student Housing Co-op takes inspiration from the holistic ways that St George's contributed to people's lives, and we would love for our cooperative to have community space and to be able to give back to the community by organising events and enjoying mutual support from other cooperatives, such as Scotmid, which have given us some funding. The Cooperative Hub. So this is the mixed-use space that Lisa was talking about. It's a collaboration between various Glasgow-based cooperatives, and we're considering combining funds and efforts to secure a large property which could be a shared space for cooperative business, such as the Media Co-op, and cooperative housing, such as Glasgow Student Housing Cooperative. We want the liveliness and vibrancy of mixed-use space as a place for the cooperative community to live and work together to grow the movement and enjoy the mutual benefits of cooperation. The example below is the vision for Sturchley Cooperative in Birmingham, I think, which has been a successful mixed-use space. The shops aren't operational yet, but they are taking applications for housing. Will Tunnell is an architect who's been discussing the pros and cons of renovation versus new builds with the Cooperative Hub in Glasgow. So we're very inspired by Sturchley, and we hope that this vision could become reality if we don't succeed on the open housing market. The dream for Glasgow Student Housing Cooperative. The minimum size of a property we'd be looking for is 5 bedrooms to house all of our members and also to be financially viable for the number of tenants. But we'd ideally like to house as many people as we can because the need for housing is so acute. We would be very keen to take on a tenement block and maintain traditional architecture if possible. We viewed properties where the living room could become a viable community event space, and a large kitchen for sharing meals and socialising would be ideal. We'd also plan to use any garden space for growing vegetables and plants for urban wildlife habitat and for outdoor socialising and bike storage. We are connected with bike community projects who could help us get secure bike storage and a maintenance kit. If the cooperative hub project goes ahead, then we would have access to larger spaces such as meeting rooms or a community social space. We've also been thinking about if we could include a cafe or something like a cinema so that we could hold other presentations. The Architectural Association has published a green vision for renovating a traditional Glasgow tenement block, which we take inspiration from with Commonwealth, which I'll show in a few seconds. And in Glasgow, there have been some interesting tenement adaptations, such as the sunroof on the Centre of Contemporary Arts, which you can see in the image. So the lower layers are used as a social space. It's got a cafe and a bookshop, which you can't see. And then the tenement buildings hold the galleries and then the cinema and the courtyard enclosed it all. So this is the Architectural Association Grand Lab and Commonwealth's vision for how to renovate a Glasgow tenement block. As you can see, we have green renovations such as cooperative heating, new glazing, and also the social aspect is really important to this in that the courtyards can be used as a community space. And I think this strikes a really good balance between privacy for accommodation, but also community use. And I think that's really in the cooperative spirit. So ideally, if we could finance this, this would be our dream. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.